Agwumike ended up dropping the news about Kelsey Mitchell, stated all WNBA first team and three-time WNBA All-Star Kelsey Mitchell is finalizing a 1.4 million Supermax one-year agreement to return to the Indiana Fever. Now, the first thing I'm thinking about is, what is Kelsey Mitchell going to do next year? Will she stay? Will she go? What is going on? Now, we look at some of the evidence of Marina Mabrey, Brittany Sykes. Instead of taking the one-year Supermax, they did the 2-year max contract, which I still feel like they could be traded off of.
So the Fever's offseason is off to a predictably good start. I mean, we all knew, especially after Caitlin Clark said it on the NBA on NBC broadcast, that Kelsey Mitchell was priority number one. They had said it back before the front office did. You didn't know maybe if the CBA impacted it, but once Caitlin Clark said it, you knew that was the case, and they had the core designation at their disposal. So the Fever core Kelsey Mitchell, send her a qualifying offer at least, which means she'll be back, which means they're building around the big three: Kelsey Mitchell, Aliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark. Hell of a place to start.
You might expect losing your leading scoring partner would bring at least some frustration, especially when the entire system is centered around your success. But when Kelsey Mitchell stepped away, Caitlin Clark responded in a way no one really anticipated. She celebrated her. So what exactly is she recognizing that others are overlooking? Why does this seem less like a setback and more like a deliberate adjustment? And could this reaction be signaling a larger move already taking shape behind the scenes?
Officially going down. Everything is kicking off tomorrow. Will the Indiana Fever be coring Kelsey Mitchell? What is about to happen to this team? We got to break these talk. All the speculation is done. Okay, we can stop the speculation with, oh man, there's no way the Indiana Fever will let Kelsey walk. Oh man, we should core her and try.
No one expected the most composed reaction in the middle of total chaos to come from the one player who suddenly had the most at stake. And yet that is exactly what happened when Caitlin Clark responded to Kelsey Mitchell stepping away from the Indiana Fever like it was just another chapter rather than a full-blown plot twist.
Kelsey!
Welcome back!
Yay!
Yes, go Fever!
Nah, for real, we love you.
Now here is the part that does not completely make sense at first glance. The franchise has just lost a player who essentially held the entire system together when things were breaking down. A player who averaged 20 a night, carried the offense as injuries piled up, and turned pressure into production as if it were routine.
That is done. Benito, tomorrow, everything kicks off. Shout out to Alexa Philippou here. This is courtesy of Alexa Philippou. Okay, and here it states the WNBA's free agency dates have been set. Okay, this just came out not too long ago. Okay, here it says the designation period will be held April 6th through the 7th. That is tomorrow and Tuesday. It is going down. Will Kelsey Mitchell get cored? Okay, this is where qualifying offers can be set up and core designations can be extended.
This was not simply a roster move. This was the removal of a stabilizing force. And yet the face of the team did not unravel, did not show signs of frustration, and did not add to the chaos that everyone else was already amplifying.
But yeah, they ended up doing that. I wonder why Kelsey Mitchell didn't do that as well. Now, I'm all for, hey, we can cross that bridge once we come up to it, right? I'm all for that. And let's focus on this year. But I am curious. What are y'all trying to do? Are y'all going to part ways? Or is Kelsey Mitchell looking at a way to actually, I don't know, find a way to get Caitlin Clark paid, herself paid, Aliyah Boston paid? What is the plan here? It could be positive. It could be negative. I don't know, right? I don't know. But she could be saying, hey, I'll take the Supermax this year.
Instead, she smiled, showed support, and leaned fully into something that many only claim to value in professional sports, which is real loyalty to a teammate. That response alone reveals more than any press conference ever could. Because while the headlines focused on whether Kelsey Mitchell made the right choice or whether the Fever let a golden opportunity slip away, something quieter but far more telling was unfolding in the background. Mitchell was performing at an elite level, Yet the discussion around her remained unusually quiet. Analysts acknowledged her numbers, but long-term conversations kept returning to fit instead of value. That is often the earliest indication that something behind the scenes is not aligning properly. Then came the subtle changes: fewer smiles during interviews, less involvement in team-focused discussions, and a clear shift toward a more business-like tone whenever her future was mentioned. It was not dramatic, but it was steady. And in professional sports, consistent changes in behavior usually point to a decision that has already been made internally.
The big three is back, honey. Kelsey Mitchell signed a 1-year Supermax deal with the Indiana Fever, as she should. I'm so tired of all of these fans saying this player should have took less, that player should have took less. Y'all are the same fans who swore, oh, these ladies need to get paid. These ladies need to get paid. And now that they're getting paid, they should have took less. Does that make sense to y'all? Now, the Indiana Fever still have some decisions to make, specifically who will be at that 4 position, and I think that's what a lot of fans are.
So when the announcement finally came out, it felt sudden, but it wasn't truly random. What made it feel explosive was the timing and the silence around it. And that's exactly why the reaction across the league hit so hard, because people rarely trust quiet exits. They assume something must have gone wrong somewhere, and maybe something did. There were already whispers about how the system under Stephanie White was evolving, how the offense was gradually being shaped around Caitlin Clark's playmaking style, and how that adjustment could eventually create friction for a scorer like Kelsey Mitchell, who thrives when the ball is in her hands. That kind of shift is normal when a generational talent arrives, but it becomes complicated when the player being shifted away from is the one who held the team together when everything else was falling apart. While that tension builds in the background while fans speculate about locker room chemistry and front office intent, Caitlin Clark steps into the spotlight with a reaction that completely shifts the expected tone. Instead of treating it as a setback that complicates her own position, she frames it as a moment to celebrate her teammates' journey.
That's where the dilemma lies. The dilemma lies with Kelsey Mitchell, because do you sign Kelsey Mitchell for 1 year on a Supermax and try to run it back and try to do all of the things that you weren't able to do last year because of all the injuries that they have? Or is there another team that's willing to offer Kelsey Mitchell a multiple year Supermax deal that she's also eligible for, which gives Kelsey Mitchell more stability? She knows that she will be valued for this team and she doesn't have to worry about what her future holds. There is also one more option in the fact that the Indiana Fever could actually offer Kelsey Mitchell a Supermax deal for multiple.
And that is not just a polite gesture. That is a deliberate strategic mindset at work. Because in a league where every action is analyzed and every reaction is amplified, choosing positivity is rarely the easiest path. It is the most controlled one. It also quietly communicates something to future teammates watching from a distance. Because players pay attention to how stars handle adversity. They notice whether the franchise cornerstone responds with frustration or support. And when they see Caitlin Clark consistently and publicly showing appreciation for a departing teammate, it makes the prospect of joining her far more attractive.
Kelsey Mitchell, the Roadrunner, is back with the Fever, finalizing her $1 million Supermax deal. Y'all thought Kelsey was leaving Caitlin Clark. Let's go, ladies and gentlemen. Kelsey, congrats. You're the first Fever player with $1 million deal, making history. Kelsey's been holding it down for the Fever for a long time. Clark came along, turned him into a superstar backcourt, and now Kelsey making history. Well deserved, getting her paid.
Now, does that mean everything is perfectly fine for the Fever? Not even close. Losing Kelsey Mitchell creates a very real basketball problem. You don't simply replace 20 points per game with optimism. You don't replicate experience with potential overnight. And you certainly don't expect defenses to suddenly ease up on Caitlin Clark now that one of the team's main scoring weapons is gone. If anything, the opposite will happen. Because there are really 2 paths a team can take after a moment like this. They can fall into uncertainty, second-guessing every decision and hesitating at every turn, or they can embrace the chance to redefine who they are. And if Caitlin Clark's response is any indication, the Fever are at least trying to choose the second path. That doesn't make anything easy. There are still major questions about how the roster will be reshaped, how the front office intends to fill the scoring void, and whether the system will evolve to maximize the talent that remains. Concerns also linger about whether the organization managed this situation properly in the first place, and whether better communication or faster decisions could have changed the outcome. Those questions aren't disappearing anytime soon.
If they did that, if they offer Kelsey Mitchell, let's say, a 3-year Supermax deal, that immediately makes it so that Caitlin Clark can't get that Supermax deal when she is eligible next year. And so that's where it gets really sticky. We still do not know what the Indiana Fever are going to do. And I'm going to be so honest with you guys. I don't really understand this front office. Like, there have been a lot of decisions that they've made, even in players that they signed last year, that I didn't truly understand.
But what is becoming clearer is the kind of leadership Clark is bringing into this uncertainty. She is not trying to control the narrative. She is not trying to shift blame. She is not even trying to position herself as the center of the story. Instead, she is doing something that is surprisingly rare in professional sports, which is letting someone else's moment remain their moment. It builds credibility, and that definition of leadership is about to be tested in ways that go far beyond press conferences and polite reactions. Because once the season starts and the cameras stop focusing on statements, everything shifts back to performance, execution, and results that cannot be softened with good intentions. That is where leadership either holds up or quietly falls apart under real pressure and competition.
I think if Kelsey Mitchell went to the Fever front office and said, hey, respectfully, I don't want to be cored. I'm 30. I'm in the prime of my career. I want a multi-year contract. I would love for it to be from you guys, but if not, allow me to scour the market and see what I could get. I think out of respect for Kelsey, they would allow her to do that. So I really think the ball is in Kelsey Mitchell's court at this point. I really think the ball's in her court at this point, and it's going to be very, very interesting. I'm excited to see what happens. I'm tired of all the speculation and this and that. We about to see what she want to do. We are about to see if Kelsey Mitchell is cool with being on a 1-year max, because I know there's a multi-year max contract out there for Kelsey Mitchell. I know it.
The reality is that the Indiana Fever are stepping into a completely different version of themselves, and whether they acknowledge it or not, this is no longer just a development phase anymore. This is expectation territory now. When you have a player like Caitlin Clark at the heart of your franchise, outside patience becomes extremely limited, and every roster decision is magnified under a microscope that rarely offers any mercy. That is where the absence of Kelsey Mitchell starts to feel less like a single loss and more like a structural change that could either unlock something new or expose everything that is still incomplete. Requires coaching adjustments, smarter rotations, and players willing to step into roles that suddenly carry more responsibility than they did only a few months ago. It also demands urgency from the front office, because standing still in a league that is constantly evolving is the quickest way to fall behind.
Almost a guarantee they're running it back with Clark, Mitchell, Boston, and Hull. That's the situation as free agency gets started for the Fever. This mostly was procedural, to be quite honest, of course, but people had questioned whether things could change. And if you look at the salary cap, it's more manageable than panic would make you believe. I mean, look at the Liberty did the same thing. They're bringing back Brianna Stewart. They're bringing back Sabrina Ionescu. They're bringing back Jonquel Jones. They're big three. And, the dream obviously make the big move for Angel Reese. But you got to remember where the Fever are starting.
And this is where fans begin to observe everything more closely now, not only in box scores or highlight reels, but in the finer details that show whether a team is truly growing or merely reacting instead. Ball movement, off-ball positioning, defensive communication, and all those subtle elements that separate a team with direction from one that simply remains a human layer in all of this that cannot be ignored either. Kelsey Mitchell's departure was not only about contracts or systems. It was about timing, personal priorities, and the types of decisions athletes must make when their careers intersect with real life itself now. And the fact that Caitlin Clark chose to respond with support instead of subtle frustration adds a layer of maturity that is easy to overlook but impossible to fake. That type of response lingers inside locker rooms. It shapes how teammates interact, and it influences how new players integrate. And over time, it becomes part of the identity that determines whether a team feels connected or divided.
People are on the internet arguing that Kelsey Mitchell does not deserve a $1+ million contract, as she was the first WNBA player to receive a core qualifying offer from the Fever. Dare I remind you, she was an MVP candidate last year. She was the best player on the Indiana Fever, and you guys only got far because of Kelsey Mitchell. She literally played until the wheels fell off, until she couldn't play anymore. That's how hard she went for you last year.
While analysts keep debating whether the Fever made the wrong call and fans continue to speculate about what might have been, attention slowly shifts toward what still remains possible. This is not the conclusion of a narrative. It is a turning point. The result will not be shaped by headlines or instant reactions, but by how effectively the Indiana Fever convert uncertainty into structure, and how Caitlin Clark turns growing responsibility into leadership that delivers when pressure peaks. What has become increasingly clear is that was losing Kelsey Mitchell the start of a collapse, or the moment that triggered something far more dangerous to rise within the Fever's evolving identity under pressure, expectation, and the weight of rising championship demands now unfolding.